Hey guys, it's Mike here, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing another what-if versus battle that could have taken place during the Cell Saga of Dragon Ball Z and that particular aspect of the manga. That would have to be Super Namekian Piccolo, after his training in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber going into the Cell games, versus Vegeta as Super Vegeta in his Super Saiyan Grade 2 form. Who exactly would be able to win out of these two fighters? Well, in this video, I'm going to be going in depth into that, bringing up the manga, discussing the anime along the way, and talking about different time periods when these two fighters could have fought each other in the Cell Saga and even before that briefly, and discussing exactly who would be able to win. But before I begin, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing and enabling all notifications so that way you could stay up to date with all of my future videos. Additionally, make sure to leave a like, share your own thoughts down below in the comments, watch the entire video to the very end, and for those of you who do, and those of you who watch within hour one, you guys are number one, to quote Vegeta. Thank you, and let's get into the video. So let's begin with the first fighter in this battle, which is going to be Piccolo. And we're going to start a little bit back before the Cell Saga begins, so you guys have an understanding of just how powerful Piccolo is, and I'll be doing the same thing for Vegeta. Now, before going to planet Namek, Piccolo, after his death at the hands of Nappa, went on to train with King Kai on his planet during the time in which Goku was on his way to Namek. Piccolo and the others with him got there way faster than Goku did initially, which makes perfect sense because all of them were a lot more powerful after training with Kami. Not just that, but all of them decided to train even harder than Goku did under King Kai in order to get ahead of him after all of his training, including the gravitation training on his way to planet Namek in order to fight against Frieza. By the time that the Earthlings had gathered all the Dragon Balls and were planning to use the wishes to bring everyone back, Piccolo specifically states to Gohan that he had grown far more powerful than when he had actually originally died, which he says right here, talking about how he actually believes he would be able to defeat Frieza at this point. This is what leads to him being brought to planet Namek, in which he encounters Nail. And Nail actually also talks just about how incredibly powerful Piccolo's power is, obviously because power would be powerful, especially if it's unlimited power, like a certain emperor once had. Now remember, Nail had a power level of 42,000, which placed him above the individual members of the Ginyu Force, with the exception of Captain Ginyu. Not just that, but Nail had also fought against Frieza in his 530,000 power level. He had sensed the power of Goku fighting against Captain Ginyu, and a wide variety of other things that had happened up until this point in time. And he still believes that Piccolo is really powerful. However, he doesn't believe that Piccolo would actually be able to win against Frieza unless he was able to merge with another Namekian. Originally, he discusses how Piccolo should have merged with Kami, and he would have brought his power back up to what it originally was, or perhaps much greater. I'm going to discuss that momentarily. Trust me, I'm showing this for a reason, guys. However, Piccolo would go on to merge with Nail, which would give him a massive power-up, even on top of what he originally had before. To Piccolo, it was mind-boggling in terms of the overall ability, and he believed he could defeat anyone. In the case of Frieza, in his second form with a power level of over 1 million, that's going to be the case, as Piccolo had the advantage over Frieza at first when neither of them were going all out, and then after Frieza truly began to try during their fight and using the full capacity of that second form, Piccolo revealed that he was holding back the entire time too, took off his way of clothing, and in turn was ready to fight against this Frieza, which I suppose means that Piccolo probably had a power level somewhere at least in the neighborhood of 1.5 million to be able to defeat Frieza as confidently as he's showing, maybe a little bit less. You know, he only really needed 20% to 2 times in order to be able to defeat an enemy, and I know that people hate when I say those numbers specifically. But nonetheless, Piccolo definitely believed he could defeat Frieza. However, he didn't really stand much of a chance against Frieza after this point, when he transformed into a xenomorph form and proceeded to get the better of Piccolo, and Piccolo's enemy during this particular fight also powered up significantly after this, which I'll get into shortly. Now, after the fight on Namek and the defeat of Frieza, Piccolo was appearing to train in the wilderness. This is something that he also backed up when he showed up to meet with Gohan after sensing the power of King Cold and Frieza on display. Now, of course, after this, the two of them would go on to be handily defeated by Trunks, who would obliterate both of them after the time was done, showing them just how powerful a Super Saiyan could be close up in combat. Both Piccolo and Vegeta also witnessed the power of Goku fighting against and sparring against future Trunks. Neither of them was really going all out at the time, as Goku actually says right here, but the fact of the matter is this gave them a very important thing to gauge their power by. And after this, Piccolo actually tells everyone that he's going to train intensely, and that if anyone there did not consider themselves capable of fighting against the androids, who he knew were stronger than these two Super Saiyans he just saw, including one he just witnessed destroying Frieza and his father, then neither of them or any of them should show up for that matter. This is what led to everyone training for 3 years. Goku training with Gohan and Piccolo, which saw Piccolo get a very large boost I'll be showing you guys shortly, and of course Vegeta also trained during that time, which I'll elaborate more on very soon. Now, after the 3 years of training, when everyone's going to fight against the androids, Piccolo says here that he actually seems confident in his abilities. He says right here, "It's not that I doubt my own abilities, but I can't seem to shake this bad feeling in the back of my mind." So Piccolo here is saying that he's confident in his abilities to fight against these androids, who we had just mentioned before were far more powerful than Frieza and his father, as well as Super Saiyan Goku and future Trunks. And yet Piccolo here is saying that he doesn't doubt his own abilities and that he thinks that he should be able to fight against them. And we see just how powerful Piccolo actually got when it comes time for him to fight against Dr. Gero Android 20. And we see that he immediately has the advantage over Android 20, with his power having significantly gone up and everyone there being surprised, including Super Saiyan Vegeta. He also explains that he learned the ability to amplify his power in short bursts, which would allow him to go far beyond the power that was absorbed by him by Gero, because remember, Dr. Gero had absorbed the power of a blast from Vegeta at this point, as well as some of Piccolo's energy, and yet Piccolo was still easily handling him and would have destroyed him if he didn't escape. However, the same thing would not be able to be said when Piccolo went to fight against the next batch of androids, 17 in this case, who easily defeated Piccolo, punching an indent right straight through him and making him look like he was made of rubber in the process, and easily one-shotting him. This is what caused Piccolo to resort to desperate measures. By going on to merge and reunite with Kami, the god of the earth, once and for all taking the evil Demon King and the good god of the planet and making them together united so that they would be the ultimate warrior, the nameless Namekian, who would then go on to fight against the androids. And the boost in power was so significant that Super Saiyan Vegeta at this point in the story says that they're both ridiculously huge, and that Piccolo surpassed him as a Super Saiyan as the nameless Namekian, and in some translations far surpassed him. And all of this was demonstrated in combat when he went to fight against the stronger of the two androids, number 17. Not the strongest, who was number 16 of the trio that was on display, the real trio de dangers, Dragon Ball Super. And he was able to fight rather evenly against 17, in fact having multiple examples where he could have possibly killed him, such as with his Hellzone grenade technique that 17 was only able to survive unharmed because of the fact that he used this barrier, and then this incredible light grenade technique that he uses, which 17 jumps straight out of the way of, probably because of the fact that he wouldn't have been able to survive it, and is able to do a massive blast, which, like I said, probably could have killed 17, but unfortunately did absolutely nothing to sell, which led to Piccolo getting defeated right here. Now, a lot of people seem to believe that Piccolo stopped increasing his power after this point or didn't go up too much. However, that's actually quite far from the truth, as I'll show right now. Because after this, Piccolo actually went inside of the Hyperbolic Time Chamber or Room of Spirit and Time. And we actually see an exchange between Goku after he had exited from the chamber as a mastered full power Super Saiyan grade 4 before with Gohan, and he talks to Piccolo and saying that he's impressed because he could sense that he got a lot more powerful. Of course, Piccolo then says, now tell me what you're really here for. You're going to say that even though my power has risen, I still can't beat Cell. At which point Goku says, well, yes, actually. However, notice right here that Trunks is pretty shocked, as you could see, and Piccolo is also a little bit embarrassed here because of the fact that he was purposely trying to surpass Cell. But keep in mind Trunks' reaction. Trunks actually fought against Cell when he was perfect Cell, who was vastly more powerful than semi-perfect Cell, who was vastly more powerful than the imperfect Cell that defeated Piccolo that we could see right here. And Trunks fought against him during this battle where Trunks was using his grade 3 Super Saiyan, Ultra Super Saiyan as dub fans like to call it, and he saw Cell's power firsthand even though he wasn't at full power. And Trunks knew that at this point in time his physical power might have been greater than Cell's, only up until Cell did the exact same thing against him, showing just how strong he is. And yet Trunks, who is this powerful and was fighting against a Cell this powerful, is actually shocked and surprised when Goku says that Piccolo isn't powerful enough to defeat Cell. Now, in the anime version, there's a far more in-depth version of this, in which we see that Piccolo actually exits from the Hyperbolic time chamber, and when he does, Trunks is completely shocked. You could look at that expression on his face and see that it's basically an anime version that's extending from the manga scene. Now, with that being said, when Vegeta walks past him, he makes a snide remark about how Piccolo is basically taking a nap in there and didn't seem to get stronger. However, that is Vegeta. You could see just how frustrated he is when he goes and shuts the door behind him. He just has his bravado on. He's trying to act like he's still above everything, but it's clear that Piccolo, based upon all the context clues here, is suggested to be more powerful than Trunks, and by extension, probably Vegeta. But let's actually get into Vegeta's power leading up to this point in the story, and then we'll talk about afterward as well. Now, on Namek, because of a Zenkai boost after being blasted through by Krillin, and the active threat at the time Frieza taking over as Vegeta's body healed, which I discussed in a video in the top right corner about how Zenkai boosts work, Vegeta was far more powerful than Piccolo at this point. However, it didn't really prove all that effective because Frieza was just that much greater than everyone else there combined up until Goku became a Super Saiyan. After this, Vegeta witnessed everything that Piccolo did with Trunks fighting against Frieza and King Cold, as well as fighting against Goku. This is what led to him training for 3 years in intense gravity to try and surpass Kakarot under all means that he could possibly do. That he actually had Dr. Brief, Bulma's father, create a gravity chamber which would go up to 300 times gravity in the manga and even more than that in the anime version, constantly torturing himself and training himself under that intense gravity. This is what led to him showing up on the battlefield even more powerful than Goku was after he became a Super Saiyan and was able to easily manhandle Android 19 after he had absorbed the power of Goku on display. However, with that being said, Vegeta did still use a tactic in which he was able to remove the hands from Android 19 because he knew that they were a threat. So you could argue that perhaps Vegeta was doing this just because he was really arrogant at the time and wanted to show off his power, but you could also argue maybe he didn't believe he would actually be able to completely finish 19 just using physical force up until he removed all of the ability to absorb energy. Although a weakened Vegeta was able to destroy him, so you can make that what you will. However, much like Piccolo, Vegeta's power did not prove effective enough against the androids. Now, when he fought against Android 18, the weaker of the two, not by a significant amount, but still stayed to be weaker in all the versions than 17, Vegeta at first was not using his full power. However, after he told 18 to go full power, and then she states that she actually would, as you could see in this panel right here, at first, she definitely has the advantage over him, and is able to effectively block some of his techniques or just straight up tank them without really taking much damage. However, this wouldn't actually last for long. As 18 would go on to attack Vegeta, he would bounce back and begin to fight against her and deal even more significant damage to her than she had shown to deal to him up until this point, to where his blast was able to go right through her force field and damage her clothing significantly, which shows that the blast was able to bypass her defenses. And after this point, the two of them are fighting rather evenly, although you could argue that 18 is still more powerful than the two, up until the point to where 18 was wearing down Vegeta's energy, as Piccolo mentions right here, and then was able to get the advantage and defeat him, breaking his arm, and then everything that happens after that, and, breaking the other arm too. After this, upon learning about the power boost from Piccolo, and also about Cell, Vegeta went into the Hyperbolic time chamber with Trunks for a year, during which they got a significant boost in power. Goku comes and talks to him and says just how powerful Cell has become after absorbing 17, and Vegeta is completely confident that he'll be able to defeat everyone there, and Cell, of course, too. Which he goes on to demonstrate when he shows up on the battlefield and becomes this Super Saiyan Grade 2 Super Vegeta, which allows him to easily be able to dominate and defeat Cell if he did not, continue to play around and then allow him to become his perfect form. Now, after Cell became perfect, Vegeta was not able to do really anything against him in a normal combat. Instead, he had to lure Cell into basically taking one of his attacks, something that he charged up a gigantic amount of time for, and was able to create a new technique along the way, the Final Flash, which was far more powerful than his Gallic Gun or Big Bang attack, and thus in turn far more powerful than what we've seen something like a Kamehameha can put out, and in turn firing it at Perfect Cell, who at the same time was suppressed and basically allowed the move to hit him up until he tried to dodge at the very last second, which caused him to take a significant amount of damage that you could see here. Something that obviously Piccolo at this time wouldn't have been able to do. However, when it comes to the Piccolo who exited the time chamber, there's a much, much greater possibility that he definitely would have been able to do the same thing. And the biggest example of Vegeta and Piccolo's power at this point in the story goes into the Cell games, and more specifically a fight that they have against Cell's children, the Cell Juniors, who are all incredibly powerful and stated in different sources to be equivalent either to a suppressed Perfect Cell up until a certain point, or the Super Saiyans Vegeta and Trunks. However, when it comes time to this fight, we see that Vegeta, Trunks, and everyone is fighting against them, including Piccolo. And Cell makes mention here that it looks like Vegeta and Trunks are the only ones that are fighting back. Since Goku used up his strength, he's in danger too. However, if you notice, in the background we see Piccolo, who is fighting evenly against the Cell Juniors. While Trunks is really struggling here, as we could see, fighting against them, Vegeta is actually taking shots back and forth against them. We never actually see Piccolo take any shots whatsoever on screen in the manga. And as a matter of fact, in the anime version, Piccolo is doing really well against the Cell Juniors, where there's points where he's fighting more than one at the same time. Not just that, but if I recall correctly, in the anime version, Cell also makes mention of Piccolo fighting evenly against them too, just like Vegeta and Trunks are the only ones fighting back. It's likely that he also just mentioned Vegeta and Trunks here because the fact that those were the two that came to mind that had fought him previously in his powered up forms. But nonetheless, Piccolo is definitely holding his own just as well as they are. And as we could see right here, Piccolo, Trunks, and Vegeta are the only ones who are left standing at this point after the fight against the Cell Juniors. And we have to keep in mind too, when it comes to the power of Vegeta and Trunks, both of them went into the Hyperbolic time chamber again for a second time. In the manga, as far as we know, Piccolo only went into the time chamber once. And when Piccolo went into the time chamber, he was already stronger than Vegeta and Trunks. So if anything, all the depictions we're seeing here seems to suggest that Piccolo is actually around the same level comparatively to Vegeta and Trunks when they're powered up at full power after they went into the time chamber a second time, which shows just how massive a boost Piccolo must have gotten inside the time chamber. And we also don't know what form Vegeta and Trunks are in right now. It's entirely possible that both of them actually mastered Super Saiyan inside the Hyperbolic time chamber, which is something I'll probably do a video about on its own in the future because it is a question worth pondering. If they did, that shows just how massive a boost Piccolo got even more, because a lot of people speculate that those forms have greater multipliers. multiplier. I don't know if I would say that, but again, another video I'll talk about in the future. I got so many ideas, guys, trust me. The only things that we could really say to suggest that Vegeta might be more powerful than Piccolo here are when he goes to attack Cell after he rages out at the death of his son Trunks, which leads to Vegeta actually causing super perfect Cell, as we could see right here in this top panel, to brace himself from Vegeta's attack. Vegeta then proceeds to use Vegeta's technique, but then we see that Cell is not damaged at all and proceeds to knock Vegeta down to the ground. Then later on, during the final key clash with Cell, it's actually Vegeta who blasts Cell and knocks him temporarily off guard, whereas Piccolo and the others were blown away by the Kamehameha and didn't even attempt to fight back. In the anime version, they all did, but none of them seemed to be effective in actually doing anything to Cell, whereas Vegeta did. Whether you can make an argument that Vegeta actually got more powerful after Cell killed Trunks and retained that level of power after he attacked Cell is a totally different discussion for another day, but nonetheless, we do see that Vegeta was able to distract Cell, leading to Gohan being able to annihilate him and win the day. So with that being said, who is actually more powerful out of Piccolo and Super Vegeta in this storyline, and who would win a fight between the two of them, as well as, let's even say, between the two of them at this point in the Cell games? Well, let's get into that in my conclusion. So who would win the fight? Super Vegeta after his first day in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, or Piccolo after his first day in? Well, based upon all the evidence that we seem to see, it looks very likely that Piccolo was more powerful than Super Vegeta when he fought against Semi-Perfect Cell. A lot of people, for some reason, don't really seem to believe that Piccolo got that big of a boost, but based upon everything I had just shown during the course of this video, it seems clear that he did get a very large boost, and if anything, was actually competing with Super Saiyan Vegeta, who might have been fully mastered and full powered in grade 4 at that point, and Trunks when they were fighting against the Cell Juniors and doing just as well as they were. Not just that, but also in terms of overall techniques, Piccolo does have the Makanko Sapo, for example, and the light grenade that he would be able to use on top of a possible power advantage over Super Vegeta. Not just that, but also, if we want to talk about Vegeta's techniques, not just Vegeta's technique, but also the Final Flash, for example, maybe you can argue that he'd be able to increase his power enough to blast against Piccolo, which would be able to overwhelm him despite a power difference like we kind of saw with him and Perfect Cell. But again, Piccolo is able to regenerate just like Perfect Cell, and we even have Cell making a big deal out of that. So I feel like in this case, Piccolo would definitely win there. However, if it came down to a fight between Piccolo and Vegeta at the Cell games, obviously that would be a lot closer. And I think the power edge would go to Vegeta in that case, as it is made to seem like Vegeta is stronger in both versions overall, and he plays a bigger role in the defeat of Super Perfect Cell actually at that point in time. So you could argue maybe Vegeta would be able to win some fights, or most of the fights actually, using his techniques and brute strength. However, you could argue that maybe Piccolo would be able to also win some of the fights with the special beam cannon, catching Vegeta off guard, and using different techniques and tactics that he learned along the way. However, this is the point where you guys tell me what you think down below in the comments. Who do you think would win out of these two at different points throughout the Cell saga? Not just that, but also, if you're new here, consider subscribing and enabling all notifications. That way you could stay up to date with all my future videos just like these. Also, make sure to leave a like, share the video out. Thank you all for staying and watching for this long. You guys are awesome, and make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.